Okay,
Anton, he
so
was
if we're talking,
compromised, bro.
hold on a minute.
He
If we're
was
You
talking
you
about,
can't
compromised.
if
you
we're talking
can't
about civil,
satisfy people. It don't
It's not
matter
about
what the
okay,
it's
but if
not
we're
about
talking
satisfying
about
nobody. It's
civil
about the
rights,
truth.
if
He
we're
was
talking,
who.
compromised.
but if we're talking about civil rights,
Can
if we're
y'all
talking
name
about,
anybody? Can y'all name any one person that y'all can cite with within the last 50 years that's a black person that you actually would say that they made the ultimate sacrifice for the betterment of the people?
Malcolm X,
How?
what do you mean how?
How? Substantiate your argument.
Can I, okay, can I go to what I was trying to say?
Why can't you
Because
substantiate your
y'all
argument
two are
first?
talking about, or you are talking about something different than I was even talking about. So I was talking about the policies from from what Martin Luther King was doing. And Martin Luther King jumped on a bandwagon that was already actually in motion. But when the liberals got onto it, it changed into something totally different. Again, something that was actually supposed to be just for Black people, that was supposed to actually go just to Black people, to actually put Black people in an actual position that would have propelled Black people into generational wealth, into actually having real civil rights. I'm sorry. Martin Luther King allowed it to go into the liberals, which are LBJs and all these other people that voted against it when the Republicans actually introduced it years before. He allowed that to be taken over to where civil rights became for everybody. And that's the reason why we're still in that same cycle right now where everybody else gets a footing before Black people do. Civil rights is meant for the disabled, the white, the this, the that, and the third, when it was actually meant for Black people. So,
Mika,
so
you
now
don't
because
even believe
civil
in
rights,
diversity, equity, and inclusion, affirmative action, or civil rights based off of the things that you say on a daily basis.
no,
You don't
that's
stand for that.
if you
You
read the
actually
bill
think
from
it's
if you
bad for
read the
black
bill
people,
from when it
Mika.
was introduced with the Republican House and Senate, if you read that bill, that is totally
It
different than
doesn't matter if it was
the liberal.
introduced
It
under
does matter.
Republicans or
It
no, it
does
doesn't.
matter.
It doesn't matter if Democrats introduce it or
It does.
Republicans.
It does because
It
the
does
verbiage
not.
changes. The
It
verbiage
does
changes.
not because you're dividing your support for it across party lines. That's like
But when
saying
the verbiage
Democrats have
changes,
never
no.
introduced
If something is
legislation.
for me, if something is for my group, if something is for the Jews, you're not going to change it to make it go for Black people, and that's not going to happen.
Mika, you're dividing your argument across party
No,
lines.
that was my argument from the beginning. That's why I said I
Mika,
think
you never have been for any of that stuff. Any of that
no, I'm
affirmative
not
action
for
stuff,
what I'm
none, you've never rocked with any of that shit.
walk with any of what.
Any of the things that you just said, affirmative action, civil rights, none of that
That's not
stuff.
that's what okay. You're talking about the liberal bill. That's why I said the bill that was introduced before it got to the liberals, which was the bill in the Republican Senate and the Republican Congress. Once it got to the liberal Congress, that's when it came affirmative action, DEI, all that other stuff you want to talk about. That is liberals. I was talking about the bill that was just for Black
So
people, so they would
do
not
you
be
support
no, so
affirmative
they would
action?
not be
Do you
harmed,
do you
so they
support
would not be
affirmative action?
harmed like actual civil rights.
Do you
Meaning,
support
they are,
affirmative action
meaning, not,
when it was
meaning not,
introduced?
I'm not talking about diversity, equity, and inclusion because I don't even like none of that stuff.
Do you support affirmative action when it was introduced? As it was introduced.
How was it introduced? Explain to me how was it introduced,
To
and then I can
allow
tell
for black people to get equal opportunity when it came to admissions in college, positions when it came to corporate America, success, education, so on and so forth.
you. Okay, so I believe in equality of opportunity, not equality of outcome. So I believe you should have equal chances, meaning you should have the chance to do the same thing as somebody else. I don't believe you should be put somewhere just because you're something. So that's DEI. But I believe you should not be stopped. Meaning I don't need you to hold me up. I just need you to open the door so somebody can walk through it.
So did you support affirmative? Do you support affirmative action as it was introduced?
Um, so as it was probably back then, it probably made sense. It doesn't make sense now.
I'm not talking about now. I said as it was introduced.
As you just explained it to me, them not
Here,
being able to go to
guys,
schools.
answer the
Okay, yeah.
question.
So you support affirmative action as it was introduced. I just want to make sure we clear.
If that's how you're explaining it, I just said yes.
What do you mean, Micca?
Oh my God.
You can't
I said,
say
explain to
you
me
can't
how it
say
was
you
introduced
can't
so I can
say
speak to that.
as it was then navigated across the liberal or the Democrat, you know what I'm saying, platform, and then say that you don't
We're
necessarily
talking about civil
understand
rights, and then now you start talking to me about affirmative action, all this other stuff that I wasn't even talking about. That's why I asked you
because
to explain to
affirmative
me how
action
it's
was a part
introduced.
of
No, because
civil
I was
rights.
talking about one thing.
One of
If
the
you're
reasons
mentioning a
why
subject,
affirmative
then you
action
have to
was
tell me what you're
introduced
talking
was
about.
because of the civil rights movement.
No, civil rights.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, that's exactly why it was introduced. It was to give black people specifically an opportunity for them
No,
to be able to
no,
do some
no,
of the
no,
same
no, not
thing
that second bill. Those are two different bills, Anton. You can go and read it. Those are two different bills. They're not the same bill. The bill that passed and the bill that was introduced by the Republicans are not the same bill.
it doesn't, Mika, what bill do you know is ever passed based off of its first introduction, even the bills that are
The Asian
introduced?
hate bill.
No, it was not
Oh my,
passed immediately in
the
its
Asian hate bill got over. I,
Mika. There is nothing that does not change. And one of the reasons why they are arguing so hard from the liberal side or from the Democrat side today, even when it comes to all of the things that are being introduced in the legislation today. And it's one of the reasons why most Republicans celebrated us controlling all three branches of government, is because they don't really have a say. And it's one of the things that both Trump and Obama was able to navigate through, because when Obama first got into office, they controlled the government. And so that's how he was able to get Obamacare passed. And it's similar to what's happening with Trump when it comes to the big, beautiful bill and all of his executive actions. But in any other instance and circumstance, in most situations, you have to have bipartisan agreement. And that's why they say that you got to work across both aisles. You have to have bipartisan agreement, because no bill that is introduced in its beginning form is ever signed into legislation based off of what it was introduced as. It always changes. It always changes. And even when it changes, most of the time, once a new president or a new Congress or a new House comes in, it changes. It evolves. They modify it based off of what they've experienced it to be at that particular time. That's why they were talking about killing Obamacare, but they never really killed it, because they couldn't necessarily get rid of it without hurting themselves in the process. Almost every single bill that I can ever think of that was introduced, whether you want to talk about the Tax Act, whether you want to talk about the CHIPS agreement, even under the Biden administration, all of it changed based off of what was negotiated. And that's why they have three branches of government in the Congress. No, even the tax bill that was introduced and signed in the legislation this year, it was changed, even though we all control, the Republicans controlled all three branches of government, because every Republican didn't agree with it, because their constituents was not getting enough inside of their district or their state. And so all of it changed. Everything changed. So to make the argument that, well, once the liberals got a hold of it, that's what made it bad, is a bad argument.
no, it's
Because
not
you
a
would
bad
have to
argument.
argue that for every
No,
single
it's not
bill
a
that's
bad
ever
argument.
been introduced.
If I tell you, Anton, this bill is for you, and then on the bill, I say it's for everybody else but you. Just like we in the whole Kamala campaign, right? People were complaining, oh well, Kamala doesn't have anything for black men. The thing that she put on the page for black men
That
was
wasn't
what
a bill.
everybody else was getting already.
That wasn't a bill.
No,
That's
I'm
not a
making an
bill,
example. It's
Mika.
called an example. When I'm making an
That that
example, what
that
I'm
wasn't
saying
a
is
policy
they're
introduction.
doing
That
the
was a
exact
talking
same. They
point.
did the exact same thing.
But it's
They
a
did the
bad
exact
example,
same
because
thing.
that's not a
It
policy.
is not.
That wasn't a policy. That was just a talking
I'm
point.
making an example, Anton. We know it's not
But
a
it's a
policy.
bad example because it has
No, it
nothing
is
to do
not
with
a
what
bad
we're talking
example.
about.
That is an example. That is an example of showing you of showing you that they will say, I'm going to do something for you, and there's nothing there for you. But when they wanted to do an Asian hate bill, go and look at the Asian hate bill, okay? Because it's in effect here in DC, because I'm telling you right now, everything that the Asians advocated for is in that bill. Everything that black people advocated for is not in the civil rights bill.
Affirmative action and civil rights was for black people.
Okay.
It changed once we start talking about feminism, and then we start introducing diversity, equity, and inclusion.
What I'm saying is, do you see, okay, you got to understand that there are people that go and advocate. There's nobody advocating to keep to have black people get certain things. There's advocation for Asians. There's never no, well, we need more
They're
Asian
talking about
representation. We
today.
don't need Asian representation because Asians have what's called economic footing. The economic footing, especially here in Washington D.C., gets things done up on Capitol Hill. You don't need the representation.
It don't have nothing to do with economic footing,
It
Mika.
does.
It
So
doesn't.
when they put their money forth, they get what they want on the bills.
That is not exactly how it works. What happens is the reason why they are able to get certain things passed is because they play both sides. It has nothing to do with the economic footing. What happens is Democrats understand that black people are only going to vote one way, so they don't introduce anything that allows for them to be able to benefit from. I'm not talking about today. I'm not talking about during the civil rights movement. They know that we're going to vote 92%, 78% one way, so they don't have any incentive to advocate for you or to lobby for you or to introduce anything to you because they know that you only going to vote one way. It has nothing to do with economic footing at all.
But it does, because you have things like lobbying groups that sit here and advocate and put forth
On behalf of
certain
what?
funding for things to move. That's
On
the
behalf
reason
of
why
what?
a
So
lot of
give me an
people
example of a
want those
lobbying
types
group.
of things out of. I'm sorry. No, what
Give
you
me
were
an
saying?
example of a lobbying group.
Oh, APAC.
Come on, Mika. You can't just name a lobbying
No,
group.
no,
You
you
got to
said
name
A.
the
A.
lobbying
That's one
group
of the
that
biggest. That's
no,
one
no,
of
no, no,
the
no,
biggest. They're
no.
here in DC all the time.
Come on, Mika. You're just saying a big lobbying group in general. You're
But
not saying the lobbying group that is funded by the Asian community that speaks to Asian issues.
For the Asian community, it's called the Asian American Asian American Pacific Islander something group, and they got with Kamala. Kamala actually did a whole campaign funding for it out there in San Diego. I did a whole story on it. I can literally go and bring the video up right now. It's a 30-minute video. I did all the research for it. Kamala got the Asian American community, especially after COVID. She got them over $8 billion in funding so they can rebuild these Chinatowns, so they can rebuild everything that they lost during COVID, especially out in California, because a lot of them lost money with the crime rate and everything like that, and their businesses were going down. Kamala went and advocated for it and got it.
You know, the thing about it, though, Mika, is that they advocated for these in every city, and it wasn't just Chinatown. That's why the majority of the budgets, especially when it comes to Chicago, especially when it comes to Los Angeles, especially when it came to Baltimore, especially when it came to New York, the majority of the budgets, it wasn't necessarily packaged that way. That's the way that they sold it to the majority of Americans. The reality is that everybody got that money. Everybody got that money. And what they did was, instead of investing it into the communities, what they did was they used that in order to shore up their budgets. That's why the majority of these cities like Los Angeles, Chicago, and all of them, even Denver, right, they are now suffering from budget deficits because their entire budgets was based off of that lobby money that you are talking about. It was based off, and matter of fact, these cities got way more than that. Way more than that. And it had nothing to do with Asians at all lobbying for the federal government to give them money in order to rebuild these towns at all. Every last one of these, every single major city and urban communities got the same amount of money, if not more. Their entire budgets was based off of using it in order to shore up the deficits that they have. That's why now that they're going back to pre-pandemic spending, they have $1.15 billion budget deficits. Is because Biden and Kamala Harris was giving out that money freely to every single community. All of them, every
You're
single
talking about
urban
COVID
community
money, and I'm
did
talking
that
about a
feature.
bill that actually passed just specifically for it. And I'm gonna bring it up here because what Kamala, oh boy, okay, I'm gonna just leave it at that because the thing is, the thing is, people, people.
Where did the Asian hate crime originate from?
I'm not talking about just the Asian hate crime. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about the infrastructure. They
Where did
literally
it
have
originate from? Where did it
infrastructure.
come from?
I'm sorry.
Where did it come from?
What do you mean where it come from?
Where did it originate from? Where did they start to come up with the fact that they needed to introduce an Asian hate crime bill? Why were Asians being persecuted?
I'm not sure. You tell me, Anton.
They were
I'm
being persecuted because of the pandemic, right? And because of the pandemic, where they're saying that it originated from was in China, right? And so what people were doing was they were persecuting Asians based off of COVID-19 and saying it was specifically their fault as to why it is that America was crumbling and that we had to shut down the entire country. And so that is why they were literally persecuting Asians as a result of it. And so when you start to tie in pandemic money or you start to tie in the Asian hate crime bill, especially when it came to all of the money that was being poured into the United States of America and the relationships, and especially when you talk about college campuses, the majority of the money that gets poured into the United States of America from out of state and out of the country international students specifically came from Asian countries, specifically China. And so, in order for them to preserve that money, it had nothing to do with lobbyists. It had something to do with them maintaining their relationship because they still wanted international students to come here in the United States of America
okay.
after the pandemic. So they had to make sure that they introduced this bill so that they can protect their relationships. It had nothing to do with lobbying, and it had nothing to do with people in the Asian community proposing that they create these bills so that they can substantiate that. It had nothing to do with it
Okay.
whatsoever.
So this right here is the AAPI lobbying group data. Okay, and they specifically said that, and voters is also reporting on it, but they specifically said that they lobbied Kamala Harris, VP Kamala Harris, for the funds. Okay, Kamala Harris got them. What does it say? 3.2 billion in corporate pledges aimed at addressing the economic factor driving driving the downfall of Asian communities, AAPI communities. And it goes on and on and on and on to talk about the bill and such and such and such and such.
But
They,
you can send it. I've never read that, so you can send it to me. But
I,
I
I,
know that that is the
I remember
foundation
when,
why
because
they
I
need to
was on a whole
introduce
thing
Asian
about
hate.
Kamala, and I wanted to actually understand what Kamala was doing. That's how I stumbled upon it, honestly and truly. I didn't know anything about it, and I stumbled upon that. I didn't even know she was going to these secret meetings because they were not reporting this on the news. That's the only reason I found out about Anton. So
This and going
it's a
back
lot of
to it,
stuff that they do specifically for groups of people.
the yes, and one of the things that they did was they introduced affirmative action for Black people as a result of the civil rights movement, which is the original point of the conversation. And when we go back to it, the whole reason that we introduced this is because Slimmy said that he wished he never believed in Martin Luther King and his I Have a Dream speech. And what I'm saying is, because we obviously went down a deep rabbit hole, and I'm cool with that because I like going down a rabbit hole. What I'm saying is, I believe that it's disrespectful to say stuff like that about our civil rights leaders like Martin Luther King because they died and they did not benefit from anything that they actually did that Black people benefit from today. And it's crazy how we disrespect people that made the ultimate sacrifice, even with their life, even though they knew that they can die any day. I think is extremely disrespectful for us to talk about that and for us to even compare Asians and the Asian hate crime bill
Oh, nobody compare. I didn't have nothing to do with
and
that.
to assume that they were able to benefit from things when in reality, even the things that they benefit from today, the foundation of it came from Black people in this country, and the people that made the sacrifice as a result of it is disrespectful. White
No, it's
women,
not.
black
It's not
women,
disrespectful.
white women, black women, anybody in this country that is getting any kind of legislation, including illegal migrants today, it is all disrespectful because it came on the backs of the people like Martin Luther King that made the sacrifice,
But
that then
that's
created
the
that
point
then
about
created
the,
the opportunity for other groups to benefit, including the gay community
but
and
that's my
including
point.
anybody that's
Okay,
associated
but
with
Anton,
DEI.
that is my point about. But that is my point